Chapter 10 Unexpected Apologies. Who was that? Asked Dylan. His dark eyebrows flickered. I shook my head, looking down at my phone with confusion. I don't know. They didn't say anything. Really? My dad was telling me about these calls. They won't leave him. He said they're just cold callers. Are they trying to sell you anything? Questioned Dylan. I shook my head. No. They didn't say anything. They just breed. Block them, ordered Dylan, gesturing to my phone. I just did, I replied, tucking my phone back into my pocket. Well, anyway, I should probably go. It's getting late. Didn't you just got here? Chuckled Dylan, crossing his arms over his chest. Yeah, I said, running my hands through my dark hair. But like I said, Alpha Paul will probably be on his way down here, thanks to Jen, and I don't practically feel like getting my head ripped off today. He'll be asleep. He's leaving early. Jen won't bother him. Yeah, sure, I said sarcastically, rolling my eyes. Don't you did you just roll your eyes at me? Smirked Dylan, causing me to smile. Well, that's not the kind of treatment an alpha appreciates. I laughed, folding my arms over my chest as my mate stalked closer to me, his lips turning upwards slightly as he hugged me, causing me to squirm in place. I took a few steps backwards, resulting in Dylan's raising his eyebrows, shaking his head at me. I gasped as my back hit the cold cabin wall. My mate cockily smile, my cocky smile quickly disappearing as I glanced up at Dylan in front of me, his body inches from mine. My body became flustered and I fumbled with my fingers nervously as Dylan chewed his bottom lip. Studying me with piercing ocean blue eyes, he inched his face closer to mine, brushing a strand of my hair away from my face, his large, soft hands gently brushing my pale skin. You're right, it's getting late, spoke Dylan, stepping back, his breath fanning across my face, sending shivers down my spine, tingles erupting throughout my body. I flickered my brows at Dylan, not enjoying the fact that he had teased me. He knew what he did to me. It was reluctantly obvious that I became flustered when he came close, but my wolf was begging me to grab him, pull him to us and kiss him. However, I pushed the thought away, quieting her. Yeah, you're right, I should go, I said confidently, clearing my throat and stepping sideways so I was no longer standing in front of Dylan. He studied me, his eyes widening for a split second before he composed himself, clearly shocked that I had reacted to his teasing. Dylan chuckled to himself, shaking his head, opening his mouth to say something, but he stopped, sniffing the hair, rolling his eyes. I turned at the sound of a fist aggressively banging across the wooden cabin door, nervously chewing on my bottom lip, knowing exactly who it is. Dylan flung the door open, revealing a frustrated-looking Paul, dressed in his whole dressing gown. Did I not make myself clear enough? Boomed Alpha Paul, shaking his head at me, gesturing for me to follow him outside, which I did. I'm so sorry, Alpha Paul. I didn't mean to go against your orders, but there are no excuse. What is your name? Asked Alpha Paul, his alpha tone crawling into my voice as he spoke, making my wolf coward. Claire Mason, I mumbled, turning to look at my mate quickly, who was snuffling at my alpha, his ocean blue eyes merging into a stormy gray color. Well, Clara, I expect. Do not speak to my mate like that, growled Dylan, stepping forwards, causing Alpha Paul's eyes to widen, his mouth parting slightly in shock. He looked between Dylan and I before dropping his head, closing his eyes and signing, quietly murmuring something to himself. Clara, is this true? Is Alpha Dylan, your mate? Asked Paul, his mouth set in a firm line. I knocked, taking a step back away from him, not liking his reaction. Dylan, can you give us a moment? Asked Alpha Paul, gesturing for me to follow him, not waiting for my mate's reply. My mate's response, causing him to growl. Dylan, it's fine. Just go inside for a minute, I said, causing Dylan to curse under his breath, slamming the door behind him after entering the cabin. How old are you, Clara? Asked my alpha as he led me far enough away from the cabin so that Dylan couldn't hear us. 21, I replied, wrapping my arms around my waist as I shivered. The harsh, crisp wind rushing past me in gasps, freezing me to the bone. You're young. Do you even know what you want at this age? Laughed Paul, smiling at me sympathetically. My eyes widened, taken aback by his comment. Yes, I know what I want. Really? Questioned Paul, chewing on the inside of his cheek. Clara, you need a strong, caring, empathic mate, someone who will drop everything and anything for you. Alpha Dylan is none of those things. Rage flowed through my veins, causing me to hold down a large girl. Alpha Paul, I mean no disrespect, but you don't know Dylan. Paul leaned in closer, raising his eyebrows at me. I know a lot more than you do, Clara. I swallowed, my head starting to spin as I glanced at my alpha with hard eyes, causing him to growl at me. No, of course I can't stop you two from seeing each other because you're mates. But mind I remind you that Dylan is here on a business trip. I'm paying him to train my fighters and teach them everything he knows, and he has agreed to do so. I will not tolerate any distractions. I nodded my head once in understanding, trying to remain respectful towards my alpha, but also let him know that I wasn't happy with what he was saying. Alpha Dylan takes his work very seriously. Good, because I don't want him cutting any sections short so he can go and have a picnic with his mate in the meadow, tamed Alpha Paul. Isn't an alpha supposed to be happy for their pack members when they find their mate? I replied through grinded teeth, averting my eyes. Oh, of course, no doubt. I would be happy for you, Clara, said Paul, holding his palms up defensively. If it was anyone but him. I shook my head, letting out a big sigh. My wolf begging me to allow her to take control, but I pushed her back down, refusing her. No, I'm going out of town for business reasons, but Beta Charles will be taking over whilst I'm gone. He will be keeping an eye on Dylan during training sessions to ensure they aren't interrupted. That's fine, I said, raising an eyebrow. Very well. Good night, Clara, and I'm truly sorry, said Paul, turning and walking away back to the grounds. Sorry for what? I asked, but Alpha Paul ignored me, only walking faster through the darkness until I could no longer see him. I ran my hand through my long hair, pulling it into a messy ponytail as I inhaled deeply, shaking my head. Alpha Paul had struck a chord with me, confusing me. I don't know why he dislikes Dylan so much, but I could only put it down to healthy alpha rivalry, or just plain jealousy. I slowly trotted back to the cabin, pushing the door open as I stepped in, seeing a ignorant looking Dylan sitting on the couch, his elbows resting on his knees. He, he looked up at me with confusion, raising his eyebrows. What did he say? He's accepted the fact that we are mates, but he made it clear he don't want you getting distracted or losing focus, I replied, deciding to leave out the part where Alpha Paul tried to change my mind about Dylan, knowing it would probably cause more trouble than it was worth. Dylan swagged, smiling. We're all good then. I averted my glance, Paul's comments almost stinging me. I couldn't stop his words from echoing in my head, making me wonder what he meant. Although I knew he was right in one aspect, I didn't know much about Dylan. Can you tell me about your pack? When did you become alpha? I asked, settling myself down on the couch next to my mate, taking him off guard. What's with the sudden questions? Laughed Dylan. I swagged. I just want to know more about you. Dylan nodded, chewing on his bottom lip and running his hands through his messy dark hair. Okay, I took over the pack when I was pretty young. I was 17. I raised my eyebrows, cocking my head slightly. Why? Were you so young? Dylan's shift uncomfortably, varying his glance as he flickered with his fingers, focusing on them attentively. Well, my father was a. Wow, what a big word. Okay. For the most part, he was a good alpha, but he sometimes did things that would put the pack at risk. He almost started a few wars. Eventually, my family set him down and told him he was no longer fit to be an alpha. It was getting worse over time, and we finally had to step in. I studied Dylan as he turned to me, looking me deeply in the eyes as he matched my body language slightly, cocking his head at me. He told us he would rather die than give up his alpha position. The next day, my mother found him. He had hanged himself. My eyes widened as I stared at my mate in shock. He swallowed, flickering his brows as he dropped his gaze, signing gently. I wrapped my arms around him, pulling him close to me, caressing his back gently. I didn't know what to say, but I wanted to comfort Dylan, as he seemed uncomfortably talking about it, causing me to feel guilty for asking. I'm sorry I asked, I didn't mean to. Clara is fine, said Dylan, smiling slightly as he pulled away from the hug, leaving his fingers loitering on my skin. It would have come up eventually anyway. Dylan stood up, leaned down, planting a soft kiss on my forehead, before taking both of my hands into his. Come on, I'll walk you back to yours.